So this will hopefully be a very short video just to walk you through some of the things in the PowerPoint that you'll need to know some details about so that you could submit what you need to. I put two audio recordings on Blackboard. One's a pretty short explanation of some of the key points of what we're talking about today, and then the other one is a little more lengthy guided practice at self-awareness, the mindful awareness piece of this week. So why am I asking you to do this? So this is the intensive week is what I'm considering it, so that I'm asking you to practice some of the skills on a daily basis in a more intentional and intensive way. And the purpose of my doing that is that I've happened to have found that communication difficulties very, very often result or stem from a difficulty at managing inner responses to what's happening in our lives. In other words, if I'm working as a therapist with a couple, say, or in a classroom between two children who are trying to negotiate rules of a game, the reasons that conversations kind of fall apart and become reactive and hyper-emotional and not productive seems to be because one or both of the people in the conversation lose, the way we put it is they lose control of themselves. And that's kind of technically true because their reactions begin to control them. And their reactions, as we talked about a little more at length in the last couple of weeks, come about with a lack of awareness of our own responses to things. So I hear something that I don't like, it's unpleasant. I have inner reactions that are emotional in my body, I don't like that, so I kind of fight it and I want to stop it. I have a running stream of thoughts that kind of fuel that unpleasant negativity, and I let that go because I don't even know what's happening. And before I know it, what I say and what I do, and even more of what I think, is being pushed more and more in that unpleasant negative direction. And when two people are doing that, they're burying themselves in the conversation. That's what happens when things lead to outright fights, when they lead to outright arguments that are not helpful or constructive, as opposed to a more skillful, mindful, more aware way of interacting with others that can lead to negotiation, even when there's outright disagreement, that can lead to a deepening of relationships as opposed to polarization of relationship, even when two people just flat out disagree in every way possible. Okay? So there are ways that we can communicate and negotiate that are skillful, and I happen to feel that it starts with our responses to our thoughts, feelings, sights, and sounds. And so that's why I'm asking you to do this, to dedicate a daily amount of time to practicing some of these things. And as we move along in the next few weeks, we're actually going to talk a little bit more about what we do after that. We have a check-in with ourselves. We become as self-aware as possible, moment to moment. And then what do we do? What questions do we ask? How do we listen? What do we say? Those are things that we're going to cover in the next few weeks. But this is essential for us to have a starting point to do any of those things. To do any of those actual communication skills, we have to have skills of self-awareness. So that's the main reason. And I think it's a kind of a flaw when people are taught how to communicate. I've seen it all the time. It's like, point one is become as self-aware as possible. Another one phrase is like self-distance. So kind of drop back out of yourself and look and listen to your own environment. And then that's it. That's all that people describe in communication training. And I think it's an error to move past that too quickly without as much detail as I'm hoping for us to go through this time, or now and for the last couple of weeks. So I put something that I think is really true in the first real slide of the PowerPoint. As we communicate with others, we are in control of only a few factors. And I think that that's true. That all we have and under our control is what we say and what we do in response to things that we hear and we see and we feel and we think. So how we let that guide us or influence us is the domain of our control. We cannot control what others say and think and feel, and we cannot even control how we feel or at times what we think. Thoughts pop into our minds constantly, and they are not intentional, right? All of you, I hope, know that or have recognized that. If you were to be asked not to think about anything for 1 minute, you would be unable to do it. You would sit still, and thoughts would happen to you rather than you thinking them. Okay, so in that way, thoughts think us quite a lot. And what mindful awareness, being self-aware, can do is give us control back as we notice ourselves slipping under more and more of the control of our own thoughts. Okay, so that's kind of the setup. That's why I'm asking you to do all this stuff. What it gives us is a greater room for choice to decide how we want to influence the unfolding of the relationships we have. That doesn't mean how we're not gained total control of what happens in the relationships or relationship at all. But our influence in it can be one of our own choosing and can be one that moves in a more positive than negative direction. I have one big disclaimer, and that is this, and I'm saying this for legal as much as personal reasons. I'm trained in unified mindfulness. That I'm not a full teacher, certified teacher yet, but what information I'm bringing to you is from the unified mindfulness system. Okay, so that's just kind of my disclaimer. I didn't make any of this up. I'm learning and practicing and teaching it now on my own, but that's where this is coming from. Happens to be what I think is one of the most approachable systems to teach, so that's why I'm teaching it. And I've given you the website to look it up. I encourage you to do that because it's got a lot of resources. I put some review slides. I'm not going to go over them. The first, I basically outlined the 5-minute or so introduction audio, and then that kind of reflects the self-observation slide from PowerPoint from a couple weeks ago. And self-regulation, I've just named a few of the techniques. Okay, so you can go back to the previous video or the previous PowerPoint to really do that. All I'm going to do, and hopefully it'll just take the next couple of minutes, is to tell you what I expect from you this week. So on the slide entitled Intensive Practice Guidelines, this is what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to commit to a daily 10-minute mindful awareness practice routine. Okay? 10 minutes sounds like, can maybe sound like a lot to commit to. However, we all have 10 minutes. And whether or not you have 10 minutes as you're lying in bed, or if you could get up 10 minutes earlier, or put the phone down for 10 minutes, turn the TV off when you're not really watching it anyway for 10 minutes, we all have 10 minutes. And what I'm going to ask you to do is use the guided audio that I provided for you as a template. And you can use it, in fact, I might encourage you to even try to use it at least a few times. And you can use it just every day. If you did that, that'd be totally fine. And in fact, you might get more out of it if you did that. But I want you to practice 10 minutes a day the mindful awareness routine that I've put forward in that audio. Okay? So I'm going to make an announcement to encourage you all to start today, Monday. But just do it as soon as you can. I'm also going to ask you to do at least 3 micro hits of practice throughout every day, 3 times a day. Now, micro hit is a pretty specific thing. It means anything between like 5 or 10 seconds to a full 5-minute period of doing nothing but the mindful awareness practice from the audio. Okay, so you don't have to do the 10 minutes of it. if you are sitting in line somewhere and you have 30 seconds, don't look at your phone because you don't want to look at anybody else and you're not really looking at anything on your phone anyway, okay? Sit and try to track and label and focus in on see, hear, and feel as I presented in the audio. If you're at a stoplight, that's a great time to do it. Turn everything off or leave music on or whatever and just use it in your practice, labeling it. Do that 3 times every day, sometime, doesn't matter when. Okay, so that'll be something you kind of have to remember to do. Set some phone alarms or something like that so you can do it 3 times a day. And this is not something that you have to seclude yourself for. Okay, you can do it while you're walking somewhere even, and use the feelings of walking and label that feel as a part of the practice that you're doing. All right, so I also want you to use at least 2 self-regulation techniques every day. Find times that you'll need them because we all feel reactive during the day. Sometimes you can use them anytime you need them, and you choose any 2. You can do the same 2 every day. You can switch them up every day. It doesn't matter to me. Use some from other student suggestions. Use some from my PowerPoints. Use some that you make up. Do something that allows you to get in check with yourself and to lower a feeling of reactivity. Okay? And lastly, something I haven't mentioned before, but I want you to do this at least 3 times throughout the week. I want you to do a writing exercise called expressive narrative journaling. Expressive narrative journaling is not just expressive journaling. Expressive journaling is write in a journal in very emotional terms using heightened emotional language. That's an important part of expressive narrative journaling, but the narrative part is that it has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end conclusion to the story. So what I'm going to ask you to do is look back in the previous day or the day prior, and describe an emotional event that occurred during that day or during that time period. And write a journal with clear emotional focused language, okay, your feelings as the event happened, and a coherent and organized narrative structure. That means it has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. You're telling a story that involves a lot of emotion, that describes the real event that you underwent during that time period. I'm not going to ask you to share those with me so they can be as personal and intimate to your life as you want. You are not going to share those with anybody else. I'm simply going to ask some questions about your experience in writing it. Okay, so that's 3 times a week during this 1 week. I'll have other things that I'll ask you to practice doing at other times after this week, but this is just a 1 week time frame. Okay, daily practice for 10-minute practice, at least 3 times a day micro hits, at least 2 times a day self-regulation techniques, and at least 3 times throughout the whole week expressive narrative journaling. I'm not going to make a format for the practice log because I am going to want you to tell me certain information about or report on certain information about your practice. I'm not going to make it for you. You can just make it in whatever format you want. You can handwrite it in a little notebook, take a picture of it if you want, and upload it then. You can make bullet points. You can actually make a chart day by day if you want. But I've outlined what I want you to submit. Dates and times of your 10-minute daily practice. All that is 9:23, 10 minutes at 9 p.m., whatever. That's it. Okay, I just want to know that you did it. But also, if you have questions or things that come up that were difficult about the technique, about the circumstances you were in, about the environment, things like that, let me know what those are. And again, this doesn't have to be overly personal. Just keep it to the structure of how the thing works. Okay, so if you had confusion about what you were doing and things like that. But I think I'll try to be as clear as I could on the 2 audio recordings. So that's for your daily 10-minute practice. I also want to know when and how often you practice the micro hits. That means that you give me a list of dates and the quantity. So if I practice 3 times today, 9:23, 3 times. That's it. Okay. Also, I want you to list when and how you use the self-regulation techniques. That means the date and what technique you used. And throughout all these, anything that come up with questions or things that stood out to you, make a note in that practice log too. Okay, and then there's also a self-reflection on Blackboard. All right, hopefully this is clear enough. I didn't give you any like extra reading or really any new things this week. My hope is that your intensive daily touch-in with these things will be what serves us for this week. And don't forget, we are meeting on Thursday at 2:30 in the classroom 2024 in the HEC building. That's the 26th, I think, September 26th. So that we will go over a little bit more detail about this stuff and bring your questions and stuff too, because I want it to be as clear as possible so you can continue to use it throughout your life, and certainly throughout the rest of this course as we talk about active listening and maintaining a professional stance and other skills like that. I think that's it. The week after next is, I think, when you are to submit your community experience assignment, so don't forget about that. Just keep checking the syllabus every once in a while for dates for submissions. Okay? Email or text or call with any questions, and I'll see you Thursday.